Hey, how you doing, buddy?
How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. So we've got a room here. We are all junior high teachers, a variety of different content areas. And so I'm just going to let you dive right into it and work your magic. And so I think for most of these, this is their first time. It's sort of a guest speaker / virtual field trip experience. So,
Okay.
you're definitely setting the bar super high because I've seen your work before. So I'll get my ugly bald mug out of the way and let you rock and roll here. And we've got about 20 minutes or so, and I'll just kind of keep tabs and we'll get going from there.
Well, thanks for bigging me up, but I'd say to you all, just keep your expectations low, and this should go quite well. So it's horrible when people go, and this is the great speaker, and you come on, and the faces of disappointment are in front of you. I think what Aaron has asked me to do is to really speak about how I use Skype as a window really for my exploration into classrooms around the world. And I do a lot of this. So I sit in my office in Stratford-on-Avon in Coventry in the UK, and I reach out to schools on all different parts of the planet who've got the capability to do so. And then we extend that by taking it into mountains or sometimes on ice. The areas I work don't really get the coverage for using visual Skype. So, but the Himalayas, Mount Everest, so that's where we create a lot of our platforms. So that's visually what I do. As I'm an explorer, so I play in cold weather areas around the world and high altitude areas. And what's inspired me to change my life, I try and engage with students and teachers to not maybe become explorers, but to really view the world differently. And that's the importance of my job. I can only do this if I'm honest and come across as that ordinary person that people can relate to. Does that make sense? So it's kind of, am I coming through okay?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah. If I set myself up as this is great, untouchable explorer, then I can't relate to students or teachers. It just can't happen. So I need to have that honesty. And the way we create that is by showing them how vulnerable we are. So we're on a mountain and I'm cold and I'm sort of feeling down that day. I will tell them that I'm feeling like that because we want people to understand how human we are. Okay. So there's the different aspects of this. I speak to students from privileged backgrounds to remote funded schools in the middle of nowhere, and that's the spectrum. So I only have a short period of time, like 5 minutes, to say where I am, say what we're doing, and say why we're doing it. So it's got to be sharp and precise and inspiring. So what I do is three things. Four things really. I like the fourth one, but three things really. The first one is, and this is for everybody, I try and teach people, and this is through my expeditions, remember, this is like beautiful backgrounds of Everest or the North Pole or whatever. But I ask people to try and have a bit of respect for themselves. I think it's so important. Everything in life comes from here. So the center of the universe is wherever you're standing. And whatever action you do has a reaction. Never underestimate the power of the individual. We all have a say in this beautiful world we live in. So respecting yourself is the beginning of all of that. So we try and encourage students to do that. The second thing is to respect the environment. Just as you would do your family or whatever concerns you in life, have a reconnection with the environment. And I think as human beings in inner cities or in certain countries, we've lost that sort of closeness with the environment. Even though we think we haven't, we have. It's only when you live in an Inuit settlement, Nepalese settlement, and you're up against the visual side of climate change, that you understand how important the environment is. I was speaking, this is going off tangent a little bit, but I was speaking to a guy called Lord Drayson, who's very influential in the UK in politics, speaking to him the other day about this very matter. And he says, what's the importance of the environmental side? And I said to him, it's making sure that individuals know that they have a responsibility. No matter how old you are, you've got a responsibility for your own family, your own village, your own your own community, your own country, and it goes on like that. Whatever you do will reflect on other people, because it's inspiring. And he loved that. So we're working together on certain projects. So that's two things. Very easy stuff. Honestly, super easy stuff. And the third one is what I do in life, and this is why Aaron and myself sort of meet up. It's because I think differently about life. I see things differently. I see opportunities. I understand myself tremendously well. The flaws, I've got so many flaws. I make so many mistakes. I was never a good soldier. I was never the best soldier. I was never the best firefighter. I'm not the best explorer in the world. I get that, right? Neil Armstrong ruined it for all explorers because he did the ultimate thing. He took the pressure off the rest of us, which is fantastic. Thank you, Neil. But he did. I don't go for world first. We do world first, but we don't sort of set it up as that. I kind of get myself, and I think differently. So I sit in my little home here. I've set this up for you guys today, this lovely picture. But I sit in my house here, and I think of an idea, a thought of what I can do. Well, maybe I could go to the summit of Everest and hold a classroom environment for 4 million students worldwide. Okay, it doesn't cost anything to think like that. Okay, and then I go onto a board and I write down all my ideas about that thought. Who could be connected? What could make it happen? How much it would cost? And then that hasn't cost me anything. And then you try and make it happen, and that's the hard work. You try and get the investments and everything. But by thinking differently helps that. And then the fourth one, which I added on the end, because I think it's so important, and this is the one that I struggle with, is because I'm a grumpy old guy, is that you've got to have fun in what you do. Because if you don't, there's no real point. And if you have fun, then you're inspired to just keep going, keep trying to inspire people to come on board and be a part of this whole process. So that's the ideas, different things. I was going to say that I said to Aaron, look, I'm going to show a few things that I do with students. So imagine now that I've got a backdrop of Everest behind me. We're out there, it's cold and all this sort of stuff. I do things like this. I say, I work in the Arctic, and I've brought along to show you today, I'm talking to kids here, well, I'm talking to you guys, you're all kids. And I brought this polar bear tooth along. And you hold it up to the camera, and he'll go, wow. And you say, look how sharp it is. Just on the end there, it's so sharp that cuts into seals, and it's the high protein of a polar bear. And that's the front tooth. That's what goes into there. So these are the visual things that I can show students. And I also show them things like this. So I go up close and I say, these are Inuit goggles. And basically, these are made of wood, driftwood, and they've got slits in them, and they allow you to see in blizzards. So you use the camera, you use this perspective. And then I show them things like this. We've got to dive this way a second. I'll be with you in a minute. Okay. Okay, so I usually do this with my phone, but I can also bring the visual side to what I do in. So you can see that picture really well. Now, that's a picture of myself climbing Everest, going up through the death zone on Everest, where your body is naturally dying over 48 hours because you're only getting 30% oxygen coming into your body. So at that point, you've got to do what you've got to do and get out of there quickly. A very dangerous area to be in. This picture here is myself standing between an iceberg on a program that I did called Top Gear, when we guided the presenters of this British program to the magnetic North Pole, but I'm still just here. So you can show this. This could be on a massive. I don't know what your screen's like. This could be a massive screen in a sports hall, and then this is a picture of my face, and you can bring it right up and show them how my eye here had frozen over through a blizzard, and how my whole face had frozen over. All fun stuff, huh? Oh, by the way, I wasn't going to show this, but it's an African sphere for you. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So, random stuff. One of the other things that Aaron and myself talked about that we could show you today is imagining me the other side of the world, talking to a school in California, wherever it might be. And what I'm going to do for you guys now is show you the temperature difference between the North and the South Pole. The North Pole being an ocean, as you know, one of the biggest oceans on the planet, so it's wet, and the South being solid landmass with millions of years of ice on there. And Antarctica is a dry desert, so it's, even though it's got ice, there's a lack of moisture in the air, so it's very, very dry. So we'll now be able to find out what that temperature is like in those different regions, okay? So just play along with this, guys. I know you're adults. I know you're very, very sensible. But if you just do this, you'll be able to see how the students actually enjoy this. So I can see 4 of you there. But if you just get your hand and just blow on the back of your hand, if you do that now, I can see you, by the way, so you've got to do it. So you blow on the back of your hand. That's the wind blowing in Antarctica on a dry area. Now, if you lick the back of your hand and then blow again, you can see the difference of cold. A very sharp, wet cold, which is the wetness and the cold that you get in the Arctic. So there's little things like that that you can do to bring them into a classroom environment. And what I would say at this point is that I think we've forgot about the screen. I'm now in the classroom with you. I'm now delivering a lesson to you because we've relaxed, we're confident, you can see I'm normal. We throw a few little nice jokes in there. We relax everybody like teachers always do. They're awesome teachers. And then we just get on with it. Before I finish, I'm going to tell you something really funny, okay? Teachers love this. I wasn't going to do this, Aaron, but I'm going to do it, okay? Because you've got to show the power of what we're doing, okay? So what I do is sometimes when I'm giving talks to classes, some of the students mess around. You know, students do mess around sometimes, and they pull faces, and they think I can't see, even though I'm 2,000-3,000 miles away. And what I do is I pick these students out, and I go, I'll actually take photographs of them pulling. You didn't pull a face, don't worry. But I take the kids messing around in the class, and I split on them. And it's great seeing a child getting told off thousands of miles away. It's brilliant. Look, in essence, just to wrap this up, I'm known in the Explorer world as somebody who uses Skype a hell of a lot. And we use, obviously we use in buildings, in normal circumstances, we use the internet and broadband and things. But out on the mountains, we use Inmarsat, which is used by the military and in TV war zones and that, you know, reporters will use this. It creates a Wi-Fi space in remote areas. It allows us to get on tablets and connect. So we use that sort of technology now. In about 4 weeks' time, I'm heading out to Nepal. I'm going to be training for 6 weeks on my own in the mountains, trying to get fitter, trying to get focused. And then there's a film crew coming out and expedition team that I'm working with, all military guys. And we're going to be doing an ascent of Mount Everest. But what we're going to be doing on top of that is linking with, at the moment, 1.8 million students worldwide. And that's through normal social media platforms, websites, things like that. But to showcase this great technology that we can utilize within education, I'm linking with a school in Kenya, in New Jersey, in Alaska, Fairbanks in Alaska, And also there's a disabled school in the UK that I'm linking with. So as parts of the expedition where I'll actually be going live into their classrooms and delivering a talk and all the things that I've talked to you about today. And this will be filmed for a major documentary that will be coming out in a couple of years' time. And the idea of the documentary is it will reach other people, people like you and I who don't go into classrooms and watch me speak. So I want to explore in a good way, in an honest way, and reach out to as many people as possible to come up with those 4 reasons, really, to understand the planet and yourself. And I think that's kind of what I do. Ta-da. That's it.
Skype in the classroom. I know, I don't know enough of you guys know whether you use it in the classroom or not, or just things that you have while we got a chance to pull as much wisdom as we can out of his brain here, or anything that he's talked about, anything else you want to know about.
Did you say that you use Skype at the top of Everest, or no?
Yes. In 2013, when I went up, there was a school in California, and the bosses of Microsoft and Skype, they were waiting for the first live call from the summit of Everest. But within 200 meters of the summit, my friend started to die. And my other colleague, his feet were frozen. There was only 3 of us on the side of the mountain. Aaron knows his story really well. So I was in the minus 45. There's a 50-mile-an-hour side wind in darkness. So pretty freaking horrific stuff. And so I aborted the expedition at that point. It didn't matter about who was waiting, what was going to happen. We walked the guys down over 3 days, and everybody lived. And then when I got to base camp 3 days later, I made a live call to all these students, and they said they'd learned more from that act of turning back than they would have done about me just waving a flag on top of Mount Everest. So all these, it's a good question. I'm sorry it's a long answer, but I think the idea is that all explorers are storytellers. And as you know, storytelling is the one great creative thing that we have as human beings. But to tell a good story, you need to be honest. You need to be able to relate to that person. So when you do things like that, people learn more about the situation than they would do about being bravado. Does that make sense? So things like that are not planned. But if you control it right and communicate it properly, it's remarkable stuff for education. Wow.
So how long do like normal sessions take, or is that just like school by school that you plan with the teachers, like how long you're gonna Skype with the kids?
Well, what I do, in a normal situation like this, what I try and do if I'm Skyping a school today, then I'd ask the teacher to link with me 5 minutes beforehand. So we get a good picture. I can see that Aaron set this up really well. I can see the classroom. It's nice to speak to a classroom rather than a wall. So you just set up these little things. And you might think that's a bit silly, but some schools don't know how to use this technology. So you need to educate them. And then what I do is beforehand, like a week beforehand, I send them a film of or some details about me, the website and that, so students can understand who's going to be coming on the screen. So they've got an idea of who I am. And when I come on, I say hello and all these different types of things. And then I start to talk for I'd say about 10 minutes. And I pick on just 2 major incidents, maybe like that Everest expedition and walking solo across Antarctica for 50 days. That's always a good one to use. And then I open it up to questions and what the students do. Aaron, could you do me a favor? So you're a student, Aaron. They'll come forward to the monitor and they'll stand about there where you are there, or they might kneel down a little bit so I can see their faces. And you know what I'm going to do, Aaron, yeah? So I sort of go, how you doing? I come from England, so shall we shake hands? So we shake hands with each other, or we do a high five. You know, I mean, it may sound stupid but it's you are making a connection with that individual, and I never knew the extent of that until I met somebody from Skype in London, and they went, "Oh, you're Mark Wood. You're the guy who turned that guy." We spoke about this young student in the States, I think he was, and he was underperforming. And when I was in the death zone on Mount Everest, I set up a classroom actually on the death zone area, which is kind of unheard of. And this guy came up in front of the whole school, did a high five, and asked me this question, and that was it. For me, that was it. It was all over. 5 years later, I found out that he started to perform better. I mean, that is remarkable, really. It's great for me to hear stuff like that. So, that was a long answer for your question, wasn't it? Sorry.
It was a good answer. Well, they got to get moving on to their next session. Mark, as always, I can never thank you enough for taking time out of your day. I know you're busy planning and prepping and all the work that you do. We can't thank you enough. I'll make sure they get access to the Expedition 8848 link and all the stuff that you've got going on, so they can follow that journey and show them all the ways to get involved. And as always, it's always such a pleasure, and I'm really honored to be able to connect with you and share all the work you do with some more educators that can use that to empower the classroom. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. I hope you've got good tickets there, by the way. Take care.
There it is.